I'm Austin with Training Tall, and you probably can't tell on camera, but I am 6'8". But don't worry, Training Tall is all about just giving you the tips and strategies to help you take your fitness and health above the average, no matter how tall you are. And in today's video, we're gonna be comparing the big three of the really expensive subscription-based rowing machines: Hydrow, Ergatta, and Aviron. And we're going to be talking about those three machines and how they compare as far as the design, the looks, the feel, and the sound of the rowers. And my goal of this video is to give you a better understanding of all three machines, so that way you've got the power to make the decision that's right for you. Now, there's a lot to talk about when comparing these three rowing machines. That's why you definitely want to stay tuned for part 2, which is going to focus specifically on the features that these machines offer. And while the features that a machine offers is extremely important, it's also important to consider the dimensions in the design and how it feels to row. And so that's what we're going to take a look at right now. So let's start off by talking about the dimensions of these rowers. So for most of us, when we're thinking about the dimensions of the rower, we're thinking about how it fits lengthwise in whatever space you're trying to put your rower in. And when it comes to the Ergatta and the Hydrow, they're both about 86 inches long. The Aviron, on the other hand, is 97 inches long. So if space lengthwise is a big concern of yours, that's something to consider. The Aviron is the longest of all the rowers that I've ever used. As far as the width and the height of these machines, yeah, they're about the same. It's not really going to make a difference. Now, how heavy are these rowing machines? Well, the Hydrow is the heaviest, coming in at a whopping frickin' 145 pounds, and the Aviron is the lightest of all three. Even though it's the longest, it only weighs 93 pounds, and the Ergatta WaterRower comes in at about 103 pounds or so without the water added in. So you got to account for that when you put in the water. As far as the max user capacity for each machine, the Ergatta can support the most weight, up to 500 pounds. The Hydrow can support the least amount, with 375 pounds, and the Aviron is right there in the middle, about 397 pounds. Now, as far as the aesthetic look of these machines goes, well, I'll let your eyes do the looking. The Hydrow gives off a super sleek, futuristic type vibe, a very modern looking rowing machine. And the Ergatta, with its wooden WaterRower design, can fit right into most homes without being very attention grabbing. And the Aviron, you know, it's got kind of a futuristic look to it, but it's also, you know, it has a bunch of different colors and stuff on it. It's the most eye-jarring of all three machines, but is that something that you really want to consider? That's really up to you. And just a quick note on the storage of these machines, the Ergatta and the Hydrow both stand up vertically for storage. I think the Ergatta has a slight edge because you can very easily fold down the monitor when you store it. With the Hydrow, you can't really fold the monitor super well. And the Hydrow being super heavy, it is kind of a pain in the butt to move around, out of all three machines. And the Aviron actually doesn't stand up vertically, it folds in half instead. So if you don't have a vertical place to put your rower, this thing folds in half, which is pretty cool. So you have some options to weigh out there as far as the look and the design. Do you mind if a rower is extra heavy or extra long or is made of wood? These are some things to think about. Now let's move on to the feel of the rower. And when we talk about the feel, I'm talking about the comfort level as far as sitting on the machine, taking strokes. How do the strokes feel? How does the seat feel? How does the handle feel? Let's dive into it. First, let's take a look at the seat on each machine. Let's start off with my favorite of the three seats, which is the Aviron seat, because they've really taken the traditional rowing seat and have modernized it to better promote proper biomechanics when you're taking rowing strokes. If you look closely at the design of the seat, you can see that the back end of it is actually raised up to help promote proper forward sitting to protect your lower back when you're rowing. That, plus having a spot for each butt cheek, makes this seat really freaking awesome. My second favorite of the seats is the Hydrow seat. It's pretty much your standard run-of-the-mill rowing seat that you would find. It's got a nice cushion level to it, and it's got a bit of shape to accommodate your butt cheeks, but other than that, there's nothing special about it. I mean, it's just a comfy seat. Now, the Ergatta seat is my least favorite out of the three, and I actually recently just made a video talking about how I think that the WaterRower seats in general should be flipped around, just because if you put it the way you're supposed to put it, it actually encourages a posterior tilt of your hips, which can cause rounding of your lower back and bad body positioning when you're rowing. But if you flip the seat around, it actually encourages a much better seating position, but it doesn't really have the butt cheek separation, so your butt can get a little uncomfortable if you're on the seat for for too long, and if you already have some discomfort from using rowing seats in the past. Taking a look at the handle of each machine, my favorite is the Hydrow handle, mainly because it's nice and long, and I think rowing machines should always err on the side of having handles that are too long rather than too short. Especially as someone who has very broad shoulders, it's nice to get a nice wide grip on the handle to make pulling in the handle each and every time feel very comfortable. Plus, with a slight textured grip on the Hydrow handle, it really is a top tier handle. My second favorite handle is the Aviron handle because it actually spins and rotates itself, which sounds a little weird, but what it actually encourages is a nice, flat, steady wrist position while you take the rowing stroke. You physically can't bend your wrists in a goofy way and take the stroke because it's going to roll and spin to correct your wrists into the proper position that they need to be in. The textured grip on the Aviron handle is nice as well, however, it's just a little bit too short. I find myself constantly feeling to put my pinkies off the edges in order to feel like I'm gripping wide enough. And as far as the Ergatta handle goes, while the textured grip on it does feel really nice, the handlebar is the shortest out of all three, and short handlebars just make rowing feel a little strange. But luckily, WaterRower does sell different handle attachments. You can actually purchase a longer handle and replace it. So if you do go with Ergatta, I would recommend getting the longer handle. But keep in mind that is a separate purchase. Now let's talk about the footplates of each machine, which actually has a huge influence on how comfortable it is to row. Out of all three machines, the Aviron has the best footplate positioning because it takes the footplates nice and wide, and a wider placed set of footplates makes it more biomechanically comfortablier to get forward at the front end for each rowing stroke. Compare that to the Ergatta, which places the footplates very close together. This can make you feel a little scrunched up at the front end. It can be a little bit more uncomfortable to get into that forward lean position. It's not impossible, it can be done, it's just not as comfortable. And the Hydrow falls somewhere in between both of them. Let's talk a little bit about the type of resistance that each machine has to offer. The Aviron has a combination of air and magnetic rowing resistance with 16 different resistance levels. The Hydrow is strictly magnetic resistance with a wide variety of drag factor resistance settings, and the Ergatta is water resistance. And I just want to put this out there that when it comes to resistance levels on a rowing machine, it's more of a marketing gimmick than anything. You create the resistance when you row. Proper rowing strokes are the harder you row, the more resistance you feel. And you get this on all three of these rowing machines. So all three feel good and feel like real rowing strokes. But if you're looking to really see how high can you possibly crank the resistance and have the heaviest feeling strokes possible, the Hydrow has the capability to create insanely heavy resistance strokes. The Aviron is right below that, and then the Ergatta is below that. But those super high-end resistances, they're not really anything that's going to make or break a rowing machine. And I wouldn't recommend that you spend a ton of time training at the max resistance because again, with a moderate resistance that all three of these machines have to offer, by generating more effort per stroke, you get more resistance. That's just how rowing works. Now, when taking rowing strokes on these machines, there is a different feel to how the machine helps you return back up for each stroke. The Hydrow does a really excellent job of encouraging you, almost slightly pulling you back up to the front end to take the next rowing stroke. This makes taking your rowing strokes feel a lot less forced as you return back up. It really helps to guide you back up for each stroke. On the Aviron, you don't really feel this guiding on the way back up from the actual inside mechanism itself. However, the rail on the Aviron is slightly tilted to encourage your seat to return back up. On the Ergatta, it doesn't really help you to return back up. You do kind of have to force yourself to go back up. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It just doesn't guide you up like these other two machines do. So when thinking about all the different aspects that create the feeling of the stroke, the rail, the seat, the handle, the footplates, the resistance settings, all three of these machines are pretty different. But now we're going to take a listen to how these machines sound. We're going to do the sound test to see just how loud or how quiet these machines are. Because you might be living in a studio or an apartment, and noise consideration is a serious factor to consider when considering a rower. So we're going to take a listen to all three of these machines now, but I'm going to give you a little spoiler. They're all a lot quieter than the Concept 2. We're going to take a listen to each machine, how it sounds when taking moderate effort strokes, and then max effort, max speed strokes, just to see how loud these things can really get. So as far as the sound of these machines go, I think the Ergatta and the WaterRower is the clear-cut winner as far as the smooth sounding of the water when you're taking strokes. It can be very soothing when you're at a light to moderate intensity, but even when you're taking hard maximum strokes, you get that intense whoosh of the water that isn't super loud, but really still sounds like you're doing a lot of good hard work. I think above that, the Aviron is a really nice sounding rower with a good consistent swoosh with each rowing stroke, but that swoosh doesn't drag on like a Concept 2 rower would, where you go, you just get that whoosh and that whoosh. And then the Hydrow, you know, it's kind of quiet, but it also kind of whines a little bit. You know, it's got that magnetic, that really high-pitched magnetic sound to it. But what's interesting is that the harder you row on the Hydrow, the quieter it is compared to the moderate or lighter strokes. Personally, I don't mind the sound of the Hydrow at all. I think it sounds a little worse on camera mic than it does actually in real life, but that's just my opinion. And with all that in mind, that's gonna do it for this video. The look, the design, how it feels, and how it sounds, these are all super important considerations to consider when buying one of these really high-end rowing machines. And I hope this video could give you a better look at each of them and what they have to offer. And again, stay tuned for part 2, where we're gonna take a deep dive look at the features that these machines have to offer. These subscription-based machines, there's a lot that all three of them offer, and they're all vastly different. So stay tuned for that. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know what you think down in the comments below. And if you're interested in more rowing stuff from me, training plans, form reviews, personal coaching, or my app, Just Row, you can find links to that all in the description box below the video, as well as my merch too. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.